Hello everyone, and welcome back to Crafted Creations. Today we're going to do a KITBASH video making a Season 1 Mandalorian. We're going to take the Beskar armor Mando from the Glavis Ringworld figure and the Deathwatch Mandalorian, and we're going to go ahead and combine some parts here to make a more accurate Season 1 Mandalorian. First thing we're going to do is use the boil and pop method. Check out the video in the link down below. That's going to help us take apart these figures. We're going to go ahead and use the Glavis Ringworld torso and body. We're going to go ahead and use the Deathwatch Mando armor, but first we need to put the underlay here with the holster. We're also going to use the Deathwatch Mando thighs and the Glavis Ringworld lower legs. Let's go ahead and pop the head on. Pretty much most of this figure is going to be the Deathwatch Mando because that uses a lot of the same type of parts. Shoulder pads are the same as Season 1 Mando, as well as the armor plating on the thighs. Really all we're using is the head, the lower legs, the hands, and the underlay piece from the body. Let's go ahead and pop the lower legs on there. Adjust the little knee pad. Alright, so there we have it. We've got a pretty nice looking figure so far. Definitely better proportions. He looks a little bit bulkier than the original figure. The original figure just looked too slim. Even with the armor on there, it didn't really look much bigger than a normal figure. Went ahead and swapped out the hands on there to save myself some painting. Let's go ahead and toss on the soft goods. Here there's a little hole. You can kind of just loop that around the peg hole in the neck. That was the spot that originally attached to the armor. But if you go ahead and just slide that right over, that'll hold that in place. Awesome. So now we've got the figure built. Let's go ahead and start some painting. First thing we're going to do is paint the gray for the flight suit. We're going to go ahead and take some of our elephant gray and a touch of black. So we're going to go ahead and darken it up a little bit. And then we're also going to use some of that black to do some washes on the figure towards the end of the video. Thankfully, with the way that the new figures are designed, the shoulder pads are attached to a ring on the peg inside, so it's easy to move those out of the way when you're painting. I could have painted all the parts individually before I assembled it, but from what I've found, that tends to risk damaging the paint job when you try to use force to pop those back in the pegs. So I like to always assemble first and then paint around. It also saves you time and trouble because you're not painting parts that you'll never see. So let's go ahead and get this a nice even coat. And don't forget to water down your paints quite a bit because you don't want those brush strokes to show. If you have a nice thin layer with a lot of water, the paint kind of settles in place, and then you can go over it a couple times to get a nice smooth even coat. Let's go ahead and get the legs. You could go ahead, you're going to probably need to do 2 or 3 coats just because of how thin I'm painting, and also like to add different tones. Makes it better, makes it more photorealistic when you add different layers and more washes, especially for a Season 1 Mando. He's going to get all that dirt and grime built up along the way. So next part we're going to do, now that we've got the flight suit painted, we're going to go ahead and paint the tan parts of the armor and the flak jacket underneath the armor. Let's go ahead and start with the shoulder pauldron. because of the logos that are printed on this figure, you're probably going to need a couple coats just so that the white logos don't shine from underneath. And as usual, as I've mentioned in some previous videos, I have a mini fan set up off camera that helps with the drying process. You just have to be careful that the fan isn't blowing on your paints or those will harden up on you. But I do like using that because it definitely speeds up the customizing process. You don't have to sit and wait as long for your paints to dry. Really all I do is I just move on to another spot, and then by the time I'm done with that, I'm ready to go back and add a second coat. As you can see there, nicked it a little bit with the paintbrush, but not to worry. I'm going to go ahead and add some washes on there, and that just adds more scuff marks to the figure. While that part's drying, let's go ahead and do the flak jacket. This part I did a little bit thicker paint, so I'm going to go ahead and water my brush here in a second, just kind of smooth that out and move that glob of paint towards the back of the figure. You can already see this starting to take shape here. Definitely looking a lot better than that original figure. While those are drying, I'm going to go ahead and add some gray here to the side piece, the armor plating on the side. Add another few layers onto the vest here, as well as the other hip plate. So for this, I went ahead and I used the chocolate brown apple barrel with a tad of the flamenco red. That gave us pretty much a picture perfect color from the Season 1 Mandalorian armor. And for the plates, because he is a dirtied Mando, you don't necessarily have to be super pristine, but I do always like to make sure that I have an even coat for the base paint with no brush strokes, and then if I want to dirty them up after the fact, we'll go ahead and use some washes on top. Go ahead and paint up the wrist gauntlets there. You probably could just kind of speed through this part and still get a nice looking figure, but I'm a little bit picky when it comes to my customs, so I always like to go the extra step and just do the weathering and washing towards the end. Go ahead and paint the chest armor here, leaving that middle diamond there unpainted. Now you notice for this part, you can see how watery the paint is. It barely looks like you're getting a coat on there. That allows me to manipulate the placement of the paint so that it doesn't all glob in one spot. As it's drying, you can just keep your brush moving and it'll slowly fill in the cracks and creases. And what you can do, if it dries a little bit and it it doesn't look how you want it, just wet your brush and you can just kind of drag the brush over the dry spots and that'll slowly smooth out the paint as well. These water-based paints are really easy to work with and very, very easy to correct your mistakes. Pretty much just rinse and repeat. Go ahead and do some of the line work here. Let's go ahead and use a little bit of that brown with a touch of the elephant gray to come up with a slightly different brown tone for the underlay here. Let's add a little bit more gray. That was a little too brown for me. That should look a lot better there. Let's go ahead and get that bottom part painted. You can see it's already looking pretty nice. Nice clean Mando. It does kind of have one of those retro collection TVC figure looks, but we're gonna do some washes here. Now that we've got the base part, I'm just gonna go ahead and get a very heavily watered down brush, touch of black paint, and you just kind of paint all over. The water will seep into the cracks and it'll add some shadowing into the 3D sculpting of the figure. You can go ahead and see how it just rests right in the crease on the shoulder, or on the chest armor there. I always like to go along the edges to make sure you get a nice amount of paint that falls into the cracks and creases, and then just paint over the top of there. Let's go ahead and add a wash to the flight suit here. We're going to do this pretty much to the entire figure. Some parts a little bit more heavily than others, but we want that nice lived-in look. Dirty Mando, not that clean Beskar look that we got in Season 2 and 3. I personally am a fan of the Season 1 armor more so than the Beskar armor. I understand the journey that Djarin took to get his armor, but I just think the original design looked a lot cooler and looked a lot more Star Wars. Alright, got most of the flight suit painted. Go ahead and add a wash to the flak jacket and the tan parts for the armor. After I finished that, I went ahead and used some of the Tamiya weathering powders, added some silver damage to the armor there. And there you have it, folks. We've got a nice looking Season 1 Djarin, aka the Mandalorian. We've got his bounty tracker and Camtono. Shout out to Luke Ness Monster and Commander Cook for the idea for the recipe. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more from me in the future, don't forget to drop a comment, like, and subscribe to the channel down below. And as always, stay crafty.